Welcome, listeners, to a chilling tale buried deep in the shadows of history. A mystery so strange, so haunting, that it remains unsolved to this day. Picture this. It's May 1932 in the quiet cobblestone streets of Stockholm, Sweden. The city hums with the gentle rhythm of daily life. Wooden houses glowing warmly against the crisp Scandinavian air. But in a small apartment at 32 Verkstadsgatan, in the Atlas district, something unspeakable has happened. A young woman named Lily Lindström, just 32 years old, lies dead on her bed. Her body is pale, too pale, drained of every last drop of blood. And beside her, a blood-stained ladle, the kind you'd use to serve soup, rests like a silent witness to an unthinkable act. This isn't just a murder. It's a riddle wrapped in darkness. The press dubbed the killer the Atlas Vampire, a name that conjures images of a creature lurking in the night. But who or what was behind this? A madman? A monster? Or something even stranger? Over 90 years later, we still don't know. Today, we're diving into this eerie case, exploring the crime scene, the clues, and the theories that will leave you questioning everything. So dim the lights, settle in, and let's step back to a time when Stockholm's peace was shattered by a mystery that refuses to die. It's May 4, 1932. The morning sun filters through the narrow streets of the Atlas district, casting long shadows over the quaint wooden buildings. For 3 days, Lily Lindström's neighbors have noticed something off. Lily, a friendly soul who often popped by to borrow coffee or chat, hasn't been seen. Minnie Carlson, her next-door neighbor, grows uneasy. She knocks on Lily's door, no answer. Worried, she calls the police. When officers arrive and force open the door to apartment 32, they're met with a scene straight out of a nightmare. Lily lies sprawled across her bed, naked except for a coat loosely draped over her. Her head bears a brutal wound, likely from a blunt object. But there's no blood splattered around. Not on the sheets, not on the floor, not anywhere you'd expect. Her skin is ghostly white, almost translucent, as if every ounce of life has been sucked out of her. The coroner later confirms it. Lily's body has been completely drained of blood. Then, they spotted a large kitchen ladle, smeared with dried blood, lying near the bed. It's not some exotic tool. It's Lily's own, from her modest kitchen. The room is eerily tidy, no signs of a struggle, no overturned furniture. It's as if the killer worked with calm precision, taking their time before slipping away into the night. Lily wasn't a stranger in Atlas. She lived alone, supporting herself as a prostitute, a common trade in Stockholm's working-class corners back then. Neighbors knew her as warm, even cheerful, despite her tough circumstances. She had no known enemies, no reason to be targeted. So why her? And why this bizarre blood-draining act? The officers seal off the scene, their minds racing with questions. This isn't a typical murder, it's something far darker, something that defies explanation. As word spreads, whispers of a vampire begin to ripple through the streets, and Stockholm braces for a mystery unlike any it's seen before. The Stockholm police, led by Inspector Gustav Björkman, waste no time launching an investigation. They're determined to catch this killer before panic consumes the city. But from the start, they're grasping at shadows. The autopsy offers the first clues. Lily died from a heavy blow to the head. Hard enough to knock her out, but not instantly fatal. That means she was likely unconscious when the killer drained her blood. How they did it, though, is anyone's guess. No obvious cuts or punctures mark her body. Another detail emerges: traces of semen on Lily's body, suggesting she'd had a client shortly before her death. This points the police toward her work. Lily often welcomed men into her apartment, discreetly, of course, A neighbor recalls hearing a knock at her door on the night of May 1, the last time anyone saw her alive. But no screams, no commotion, just silence after that. Whoever did this was careful, methodical, almost invisible. The ladle becomes the case's centerpiece. It's hers, confirmed by neighbors, but its role baffles everyone. Was it used to collect her blood? To drink it? Fingerprints are smudged, useless. Some officers wonder if the blood was taken elsewhere, but there's no trail, no splashes, no containers found nearby. It's as if the killer vanished with it, leaving only the ladle behind. Investigators fan out, questioning anyone who knew Lily. A vague report surfaces. A tall man in a dark coat lingered near the Atlas district days earlier. But it's too thin to act on. Her regular clients are rounded-up laborers, sailors, lonely men, but none stand out as suspects. No motives, no confessions. The trail grows cold fast. Back then, forensic science was primitive. No DNA testing, no blood spatter analysis, just witness accounts and gut instinct. Bjorkman tries to piece it together. A man knocks. Lily lets him in. They talk. Then he strikes. But the blood? That's the missing link. How do you drain a body so cleanly and walk away unseen in a busy neighborhood? The press hounds the police for answers, but all they have is a growing sense of dread. As days turn to weeks, the case begins to feel like a ghost story. And the Atlas vampire starts to feel more real than they'd like. With no solid leads, the investigation stalls and theories take over. Let's explore the possibilities, each one darker than the last. Theory 1. A blood-obsessed psychopath. Imagine a mind so twisted, so unhinged, that it finds pleasure in the unthinkable. The first theory paints the Atlas vampire as a psychopath, with an insatiable obsession for blood. Picture this. It's late on May 1, 1932, in Lily Lindestrom's dimly lit apartment. The killer stands over her unconscious body, the air thick with the metallic scent of blood. The ladle her own kitchen, tool gleams faintly in his hand as he scoops up the crimson liquid, perhaps lifting it to his lips with a sickening reverence. This isn't just murder. It's a ritual of madness, a descent into a primal, grotesque fantasy. Sweden in the 1930s still carried echoes of old folklore. Tales of creatures stalking the night, draining life from the unwary. Could this killer have been inspired by those stories, seeing himself as a modern vampire? The press certainly thought so, splashing the name Atlas Vampire across headlines to stoke public fear. But this wasn't a creature of myth, it was a human, flesh and blood, driven by a compulsion we can scarcely comprehend. The precision of the act suggests planning. No mess, no spilled drops. Just a body left, pale and empty. What kind of person does this? A drifter, perhaps, passing through Stockholm unnoticed. A man whose quiet demeanor hid a storm of depravity. Maybe he'd killed before, in shadowed alleys or forgotten villages, perfecting his method until Lily became his canvas. The blow to her head was quick, efficient enough to silence her without ruining the prize. Then came the bloodletting, a process he savored in the stillness of that cramped room. But here's the snag. If this was a psychopath's thrill, why stop at Lily? Serial killers don't usually strike once and vanish. Maybe he did kill again, in another city, another country, leaving no trail for Stockholm's police to follow. Or perhaps the act itself was so complete, so fulfilling, that it sated his hunger forever. The ladle left behind, like a taunting signature hints at arrogance, a dare to catch him. Yet he slipped away, swallowed by the night, leaving us to wonder. Was this a lone outburst of insanity, Or the work of a monster who walked among us, unseen, for years? Theory 2. A ritual gone wrong. Now let's step into a darker, stranger possibility. What if Lily's no random murder, but part of a deliberate ritual? Imagine the scene. The flickering glow of a single lamp in her apartment, casting eerie shadows on the walls. The killer moves with purpose, not panic, his hands steady as he strikes Lily's head, silencing her for what comes next. The blood isn't spilled carelessly. It's collected, perhaps into that ladle, with a reverence that chills the soul. This wasn't about rage or lust, it was a ceremony, a sacrifice to something unseen. Blood has always held power in human history. Ancient cults used it to summon spirits, to appease gods, to bind oaths in secret societies. Could the Atlas vampire have been part of such a group, operating in Stockholm's underbelly? The 1930s were a time of upheaval, economic despair, whispers of occult revivals across Europe. Maybe a small fanatical sect saw Lily as an offering, her lifeblood a key to some forbidden rite. The ladle, an ordinary object turned sacred tool, might have been their vessel chosen for its simplicity to mask the act as mundane. But why Lily? She was no high priestess or noble, just a working woman in a rough trade. Perhaps that was the point. An innocent, untainted by power, perfect for their twisted purpose. The lack of struggle suggests she knew her killer, trusted him enough to let him close, maybe a regular client hiding a double life. The ritual could have gone wrong, though too rushed, too exposed, forcing the killer to flee, leaving the ladle as an accidental clue. There's no hard evidence of cults in Stockholm then, but absence isn't proof. Secret groups thrive in silence, their traces erased by time. The police, bound by logic, might have overlooked signs, a strange symbol scratched somewhere, a whispered rumor dismissed as panic. If this was a ritual, the killer didn't need to strike again. One act might have fulfilled their goal. Or maybe they did, far from Atlas, where no one connected the dots. This theory leaves us staring into an abyss of belief where faith turns deadly, and the line between man and monster blurs. Theory 3. A vengeful client. Let's ground this in something more human, more personal. What if Lily's killer was a client with a grudge? Picture the night of May 1, 1932. A man knocks on her, door familiar, maybe even charming. Lily lets him in, expecting another routine visit. They talk, share a drink, but something shifts. His voice hardens, his eyes narrow. Maybe she turned him down that night, refused a request, laughed at him, or demanded more money. In a flash, rage takes over. He grabs something heavy, a pipe. A bottle land strikes her head, sending her crumpling to the bed. This fits her world. Prostitution in 1930s Stockholm was gritty, dangerous. Clients could be volatile men nursing bruised egos or hidden shame. If this one felt scorned, the blow was his revenge, a burst of fury to reclaim control. But then comes the twist, the blood. Draining her dry isn't impulsive, it's deliberate, bizarre. Maybe it started as an afterthought. He sees her lying there, blood pooling from the wound, and something snaps further. He fetches the ladle, begins the macabre task, not out of ritual, but spite. A final humiliation, stripping her of everything, even her life's essence. Who could he be? A sailor from the docks, bitter after a long voyage? A married man, terrified she'd expose him? Neighbors saw a stranger lurking days before, tall, dark-coated, unremarkable. He might have watched her, nursing his anger until it boiled over. The semen on her body suggests intimacy that night, tying him closer as a client. Yet he left no chaos, no smashed furniture, no shouts, meaning he regained control after the strike, working quietly to cover his tracks. Why no suspects then? Lily's regulars were questioned rough men with alibis or no clear motive. This guy could have been a one-off, someone she barely knew, slipping back into anonymity. The blood draining throws a wrench in it, though it's too odd for simple vengeance. Maybe it was his signature, a quirk no one suspected until too late. This theory keeps it human. A petty slight, a violent outburst, and a strange, cruel flourish that made it unforgettable. Theory 4. A medical mind. Finally, let's consider a killer with skill of mind trained to heal turned to harm. Imagine him, a doctor, a nurse, someone who knows the body's secrets. It's May 1, 1932, and he's in Lily's apartment, perhaps posing as a client. She trusts him, his calm voice, his steady hands. They're alone, the room quiet, when he strikes her head with surgical precision just enough to stun, not kill. Then, with chilling expertise, he begins the real work, draining her blood. This wasn't clumsy. Removing every drop takes knowledge where to cut, how to collect, how to leave no mess. The ladle might have been a crude tool, but in his hands, it's effective. Maybe he brought a kit tubes, a basin, then took it with him, leaving only her ladle to confuse the trail. He works fast, methodically, watching her fade as the blood flows out, his pulse steady where others would panic. This is a man who's handled blood before, who's seen life slip away on an operating table and felt nothing. Why Lily? She was accessible alone, vulnerable, unlikely to be missed right away. If he's a doctor, he might have met her through her trade, treating her once, then fixating on her. The seaman suggests a personal encounter that night, blurring the line between patient and prey. Stockholm had its share of medical men in 1932, overworked, underpaid, some teetering on the edge of sanity after years of death and despair. Could one have cracked, turning his skills into a weapon? The police checked local medics, but no one stood out. He could have been a visitora traveling physician, a student gone before suspicion fell. The lack of further attacks might mean he satisfied his urge, or he refined his method elsewhere, undetected. The ladle's presence nags, though was it a mistake or a deliberate red herring? This theory chills because it's plausible. A healer gone rogue, hiding behind a respectable mask, his hands stained with blood no one saw coming. So who was the Atlas vampire? 90 years on, we're left with fragments, a dead woman, a bloody ladle, and a killer who vanished. Today's tech DNA, forensics might have cracked it, but the crime scene's long gone. Lily Lindestrom rests in history's footnotes, her story a quiet echo. This case proves some truths stay buried. Was it a monster, a man, or a myth? You decide. Share your theories, I'd love to hear them. For now, the Atlas vampire reminds us, even in the calmest corners, darkness can strike. Thanks for joining me. Stick around for more mysteries from the shadows. Until next time, stay curious and watch the night.